Hi, Dara O'Kearney here, recording a video for CardsChat. I'm just back from Prague, where I played my first EPT in years, and in this video I'm going to break down one of the hands that I did. After every live session in which I record all my hands, I come back and I check them all just to see if there's anything I've missed or any leaks. In Prague, had a good time, cashed a couple of tournaments. We also recorded an episode of our YouTube show, The Lock-In. But without further ado, let's get into the hand. So I put this hand on Share My Pair to get some feedback from people, see what they thought as well. So the hand opens. I have nines under the gun, just over 40 bigs. Pretty uncontroversial. I think it's obviously an open. This was the very first hand I actually played in Prague. It was from a 1K hyperside event. Folds around the big blind. I've been at the table a while. I already know that this guy's aggressive. He's down to roughly 30 big blinds and he defends. The flop comes 5-4-2 with two clubs. He checks. Now, I want you to think what you do here, and what your reasoning is for what you would do. This is under the gun against big blind, 30 big blinds effective, 5-4-2 is the board. When he checks to me, my thinking was, this is not really my board as the under the gun raiser. I do have all the overpairs, obviously, and he doesn't have some of them because he would have 3-bet stuff like aces, kings, etc. So I can have, aces, kings, all those hands. On the other hand, I don't really have pocket fours. I wouldn't open that under the gun. I don't have pocket twos. I have pocket fives some of the time. I probably have ace 3 suited, but he has a kind of a nuts advantage here. He can certainly have ace 3. He has all the ace 3s probably. He can also have even some 6-3, 6-3 suited at least. So this is more his board than my board. So I think with my range, I'm going to want to do a decent amount of checking. And that's usually the first question I ask myself. I stack up range versus range. And then I ask myself, who has the range advantage? Now, I still have the range advantage because the stack to pot ratio is 2.3 divided by 16.1 divided by 2.3. It's roughly 7. So we're not super deep, and because we're not super deep, an overpair is a very big hand on this board. That's the other question you have to ask yourself. Am I prepared to stack off with my hand? Now, with nines, I pretty much am. Even though I'm not going to love it if I bet and he shoves, or I bet and he raises and we get it in. I'm not going to be good all the time. He's certainly going to have a lot of equity, but my hand is, I feel, certainly strong enough against his get-in range. He can get in worse pairs for sure. He can get in a lot of draws on this board. So my hand is strong enough to bet. My range doesn't really want to bet all the time. It wants to do a lot of checking, but I don't think this is the type of hand that I want to check. This is almost certainly the best hand right now. I can get value from worse hands by betting now, but there's going to be a lot of bad turn cards for it. There's a lot of draw completing cards. A club makes a flush. A lot of low cards will make straights for a lot of hands. Over cards can cause him to pull ahead. So I think I definitely want to bet my hand now. The only question really is what sizing do I want to use, and I use a small sizing here, third pot roughly. On the sizing, I mean, I felt I could go a couple of different ways. I could bet big because I have a strong but vulnerable hand, which I am prepared to get in. So if I bet relatively big and he shoves, I'll call. I won't love it, but yeah, I'm not folding my hand. But I also thought, since this isn't my board, I can bet small, and he can just interpret that as a standard C bet, and he can certainly check raise, lots of hands that have possibilities. Apart from his very strong draws, like his flush draws and his straight draws, he might even raise something like 8-7 with a club that I'm in particularly good shape against. So that was my thinking there. Okay, so next decision point. After I bet, he did check raise. And now my decision is, I mean, I don't, folding is out of the question. It comes down to, do I shove or do I call? They both have some advantages, some things going for them. By just calling, I can keep in worse hands. So if he is on a bluff with the type of hand I talked about, 8-7 with a club, and I call, and he's drawing very slim, and if he bets the turn, I can call. But there's a lot of bad turn cards for me as well, where I just really won't know whether I have the best hand or not anymore. So the same thought process that went into my decision to bet applies here. I'm pretty sure I usually have the best hand right now, but there'll be a lot of turn cards which will make me feel less good about my hand, or maybe make him less likely to put in the money with his hand. For example, if he has ace-5, he might very happily put it in now, but if a king, queen, jack rolls off on the turn, he might not feel good about it anymore, with only one card to come. So I shoved. I think I can still get called by worse, but also I think I can fold that equity. If he has a hand like jack-10 with the club that he's decided to turn into a check raise, he's going to fold it now to the shove, and that hand actually has a lot of equity against my hand. So that's why I shoved, and he did actually fold. So what I'm going to do now is look at it in the solver. So this is one of the newest solvers on the market. It's called Odin. Unlike PO, which is the one I talked about in my last video, PO's been around for years. PO allows you to set up all the parameters you want, specify all the ranges, and then you go off and run the sim. Typically the sim is going to take a couple of hours to run, and then you can look at the output. The advantage for Odin is essentially it's got the sims pre-run for you. You don't have the same flexibility when it comes to sizings, etc., but it has all the obvious sizings. So you can and it has all the stack depths from 10 big blinds up to 100 big blinds. This is a 30 big blind single raise pot, so it's been set up accordingly, and I'm under the gun and I'm playing against the big blind. We can look at the pre-flop ranges. So this is my range. As I said, in practice I don't have 4s. The solver says it's there 5% of the time. I certainly don't have 2s. I can have ace-3 suited, and I have all the overpairs, but then I have a lot of cards a lot of hands that have missed as well. He obviously has a much wider range. He's missing the really strong overpairs, but on the other hand, he not only has the ace-3 suited, but he has all the ace-3 offs. He has 6-3 suited. He has pocket 5s, pocket 4s, pocket 2s, etc. So he has a lot of strong hands, but he also has a lot of stuff that whiffed. Also noteworthy, he has much more suited stuff than I have. This is the suited quadrant here. So he's going to have more flush draws and backdoor flush draws than I will. I'm pretty much, I have the suited aces and some of the stronger other suited hands, but I'm missing all these hands here that he can have. And I don't have too much 3x. So, okay, let's see what the sim tells us. So I raise to 2.25 big blinds. It folds around to the big blind. And he just calls. Okay, so now let's look at post flop. So the flop comes 5-4-2 with 2 clubs, as we said. He checks, and let's see what I'm supposed to do. And you can see here, as I suspected, there's a lot of checking on this board. 36% of our range checks. A lot of the hands that have whiffed do a lot of checking. Green is checking over here. However, you can see that 9s is one of the hands that doesn't check. All of our vulnerable overpairs pretty much just pure bet, and they use different sizings. They can go for the minimum 1 big blind. They can go for the 2 big blind size that I went for. They can go 3 big blinds, 4 big blinds, or 4.8 big blinds, which is 80% of pot. And we can see that all of the options are used. If we look specifically at the nines, you'll see there's a bit of a difference whether we have a club or not. With the club, we do more big betting. Without the club, we do more small betting. When we have a club, it's less likely that he has a flush draw. And if he does have a flush draw, obviously that's one less out he has, so it's less likely he's going to get there. So nines with a club is a stronger hand than nines without a club, but that's a relatively minor point. So we do bet 1/3 of pot roughly, and he calls. Sorry, he raises. We bet the 2 big blinds, and he raises. And now our options are dark red for shove, this color for normal raise, green as ever for call, and fold for blue for fold. So you can see with nines, we pretty much shoving is our preferred option here. If we move down here, and we can see actually with the 9 of clubs, we pretty much just pure shove. Without the club, we do a bit more mixing. We use some of the smaller size, and we even just call some of the time. But with the clubs, we do pure shove. And the final thing I want to look at is when we do shove, what is supposed to call us. So he is supposed to call some worse hands. 8s is supposed to call. 6s, which is a pair and a gut shot, is supposed to call. Some of his 5x calls. 6-5 is a 6-5 is a decent amount of equity against us. Actually, he can hit a 6, a 5, or a 3. So that's why that's a call. 3s is a call that's open-ended. In fact, a lot of his 3x calls. So we can definitely get called by worse. We can also fold that equity. You know, a lot of ace-x folds. And that obviously has one overcard and a gut shot, so it's pretty good for us when those hands fold. These hands over here as well. Even when a hand like Queen Jack off, Queen 10 off, when those hands fold, that's good for us as well. So that's basically the reasoning here. Okay, so going back to the flop, I mean, what I really want to focus on here is how you play vulnerable overpairs on these low card boards when our opponent has the nutted advantage, at least, whatever about the range advantage. And you can see that our vulnerable overpairs are the hands that really just want to kind of bet pure, because they do benefit both from equity denial when they fold out a hand that has reasonable equity against us, and they can get called by worse right now, but a lot of turn cards will kill their action. So that's the main theme of this. When you have a vulnerable overpair, you generally just want to go ahead and bet. Whereas when you have other types of hands, you know, a king queen suited, for example, you mostly just want to check because you want to realize equity. You're not going to fold out too many better hands. You're not going to get called by worse. Those are always the reasons for betting. Either to fold out equity, or to get called by worse for pure value. Stack depth is also very important here. If we were deeper, 9s wouldn't be as strong a hand, and we wouldn't be as happy about getting it in on the flop. So that's probably what I look at in the next video. But if you have any questions in the meantime, let me know in the comments, and I'll address them in the next video. In the meantime, thank you.